Good evening, everyone. It is Monday, March 3rd. It's 7 p.m. I'd like to call this meeting to order. I'd like to acknowledge first that this meeting takes place on the traditional territory of the Stahelis. Our next item on our agenda is the introduction of any late items. Are there any late items to introduce? Seeing none, I'll move to approval of the agenda.
So move, Your Worship.
Moved by Councillor Fascio, seconded by Councillor Vital. Discussion on the agenda. I'll call the vote. All in favor, and that carries unanimously. Item 4 is adoption of council minutes. Corporate Officer, do we need separate motions?
Thank you. You could do separate motions. If you're going to do them all together, I would just ask for errors and omissions up front, perhaps. Thank you.
Well, let's keep it simple and do separate motions. Could I have a motion to adopt the special council meeting minutes of February 13th, 2025? Moved by Councillor Schweinbanz, seconded by Councillor Vital. Discussion on that. I'll call the vote. All in favor, and that carries unanimously. I have a motion that that the regular council meeting minutes of February 18th, 2025 be adopted.
Move, Your Worship.
Moved by Councillor Fascio, seconded by Councillor Schweinbanz. Discussion. I'll call the vote. All in favor, and that carries unanimously. That the motion that the special pre-closed council meeting minutes of February 25th, 2025 be adopted. Moved by Councillor Vital, seconded by Councillor Schweinbanz. Discussion on that motion. I'll call the vote. All in favor, and that carries unanimously. Item 5 on our agenda is business arising from the minutes. Is there any business arising from the minutes this evening? Seeing none, we'll move to the next item on the agenda, which is the consent agenda. Got to have a motion to accept the consent.
Move, Your Worship.
Moved by Councillor Fascio, seconded by Councillor Schweinbanz. Discussion on that motion. We'll call the vote. All in favor, and that carries unanimously. It takes us to item 7 on our agenda this evening. It's delegations and petitions, and our first delegation is Robert Wilson and Jeff Wilson from the Bridal Veil Mountain Resort. Gentlemen.
Thank you kindly. Perfect. Well, thank you, Your Worship and Council, for having us here tonight. I regret to inform you that Robert was sick tonight, so it's just going to be myself. But thank you again for having us. So if anyone has been keeping track of the papers lately, we'll inform you that Bridal Veil Mountain Resort just completed on Friday an expression of interest, or the final stage of the provincial expression of interest, which is going to public referral for our project. And so that was completed on Friday, and the province will have in the next 1 to 2 months a report that will obviously be available for yourselves as well as a constituent community in the area. So Bridal Veil Mountain Resort is an all-season resort opportunity just outside of Chilliwack, BC. And we have, about 4 years ago, put the concept forward to the provincial government that we believe this is a place that can be an incredible area for winter and summer recreational activities, and that would be a massive tourism driver for the entire region, and that would include Harrison Hot Springs. There we go. We'd like to start by acknowledging that our project is on the traditional and unceded lands of the Stolo peoples since time immemorial. And that is something that is not just a blanket statement at the beginning of a presentation like this, but it shapes the very ethos of our project. It shapes the ownership structure that we hope to envelop in our project, and it shapes the cultural components and the land management aspects as to how we go about our development. BVMR could be uniquely positioned to be a world-class all-season mountain resort planned in partnership with the Stolo communities in Salktomuk. This would be the first time that Indigenous communities in Canada would be engaged in the planning, the construction, the ownership, and the operations of an all-season mountain resort like this. The concept is simple, that unlike most all-season resorts within BC or anywhere else, the need to drive up hazardous mountain roads in order to get there wouldn't exist, because our access would come 4 minutes off of the #1 highway between the Annis Road and the Popcom exits on the #1 highway. That in itself is a bit of a game changer, because what we could do is we could build 2 gondolas that would service the resort property from the valley floor. It means that visitors no longer have to put winter tires on their car. They can get there 365 days a year legally. And that in itself creates an access point like no other in the province. So there is no other resort within the province of British Columbia where you do not have to drive up a mountain pass road and have chains at the standby. At full build-out, we could see over 1 million visitors a year enter into the region, and these visitors would be coming with cash in hand. We also believe that the regional effects of this would create for the adjacent communities, including Harrison Hot Springs, a new class of visitor that would be coming into the region that would be looking to have higher per day spends than what you'd consider to be merely the traditional day users from the valley. Obviously, that would be advantageous to a community such as yourselves. So if anyone here has ever been to an an all-inclusive resort to Mexico or something like that, we all like to go there for the same reason, and that is because everything's paid for up front. You get your drinks and you get your meals, and you don't have to spend anything else. But normally we do. After about 2 or 3 days at the resort property, usually people like to go beyond the resort and experience the local cuisine and culture of the area that they're visiting. That's where the regional implications come into play. Anytime there's a special festival within the surrounding communities, there's going to be a driver in order to bring people that are already coming to the location in order to spend money, enjoy their time with their families. They're going to want to take excursions, explore the local areas, and Harrison is obviously a very beautiful place to do that. We also want to see, as part of the programming of the resort, that an Indigenous component would be part of the very makeup. Not an add-on, but actually part of the architecture, the design, and the programming of the resort. And again, that's a very unique offering. Very few places have been able to harness a true Indigenous tourism opportunity and make something out of that. So the regional context is very important for a resort like this, because we have a growing population, as you know. Chilliwack has been considered to be the second fastest growing city in Canada for some time now. We have a lot more people moving into the Fraser Valley, and there aren't enough options for recreational activities despite living in one of the most beautiful places within the country. Real estate development is also necessary as well. So if you take a look at the map up here, the black area is our study area, and that's what we applied to look at with the province. In order to have an all-season resort be successful, there are 3 things you need. The first is it has to have people in the vicinity. And within a 1.5-hour driving range of Metro Vancouver area, you pick up quite a few people. And so if you take a look at Whistler, Big White, or any of the other large properties in the province, if you look at 1.5 hours out, you don't have the same kind of immediate population. That's why resorts such as Whistler rely on a cadre of young Australians in order to staff themselves that live 9 deep in a condo. And that's something we wouldn't have to do here, because we have housing, we have a community right at the base of the hill known as Chilliwack, and Hope, and Abbotsford, and Mission. So again, you could live in the region and work at a resort property, as opposed to having to just do it for a season of your life. Within a 3-hour driving radius, there are 4 international airports, starting with Abbotsford International, YVR, Bellingham, and Seattle-Tacoma. Within a 3.5-hour driving radius, which is what's used to calculate the ability for day users that are going to come and make a drive to use a resort property like this, there is a staggering 7.8 million people, or sorry, 7.3 million people within that driving radius. That includes Seattle-Tacoma. There is no other all-season resort property in North America that can boast any of these numbers. The resort itself is 11,500 acres. Now, we're not going to build on 11,500 acres. It's actually a smaller footprint than Sasquatch has. Sasquatch hasn't developed out their full potential, but they have a provincial lease that is actually greater area than this. The kinds of activities you could expect are downhill mountain biking, cross-country skiing, snowshoeing, tobogganing, skiing, snowboarding, but also getting into activities such as spas and other lower impact recreational activities. And that's been a changing demographic within the resort industry because not everybody can do high intensity activities as they get older. I'm just recovering from a knee surgery myself, so I will not be skiing this season, probably not next season either, but I will go to the Scandinave Day Spa with my wife. Adjacent to the property, we currently own 350 acres of land in what's called the Eastern Hillsides of Chilliwack. We're acquiring more as we speak. We have the ability to build out a master plan community that would be walkable within a 15-minute walkable area, and in order to provide housing for workers of the resort, but also adding to the housing supply within the much needed and growing Chilliwack demographic. We need more houses. Master plan communities, the best example locally would be Garrison Crossing in Chilliwack. It was really the first attempt at a real large-scale master plan community with mixed use. They did a fairly good job. Part of this we'd have to have is full integration with transit, traffic planning, and those are issues that will be coming towards the Fraser Valley Regional District in due time. So I know the question is always, what does this have to do with us? Well, as part of the Fraser Valley Regional District, the amenities that we provide would obviously enhance the livability of your area for your citizens, but also it would grow the tourism pie that Harrison is dependent upon, and we can create a unique regional experience that we grow the pie, more people come to the location, and everybody wins from. This is a quick, and I'm sure you guys have the paperwork there, comparison of the largest resorts in the area. We have the critical mass of the lands, the snow. At this point, we're doing preliminary studies on that. It looks quite good in comparison to the other coastal mountains. In fact, our snowfall, we always get asked about that, is very similar to Manning Park and Mount Baker. So those hills have excellent snow on record. At full build out, we imagine this would have around 1.1 million visitors a year. The rate of skiers in the Fraser Valley is actually lower than Metro Vancouver, and the biggest reason for that is lack of skiing opportunities. We only have really one ski hill in the area, being Sasquatch. Ski hills such as Sasquatch and Manning Park, we believe would actually benefit from having our resort in the region because it provides, again, it builds the pie. It makes a bigger pie for everybody. You have a Whistler Blackcomb or a Big White type property, a destination resort, more people end up wanting to get into the activity, and then you want to have other options in the area, and often those other options do better as well. Your Worship, where am I at for time? I know you're on a tight schedule.
Thank you for asking. I'll give you, can you wrap in 2 minutes?
I can do that,
I'll
thank
buy
you.
2 minutes.
Okay. We have done preliminary economic studies that show that this could be a high yield property, bringing in over $250 million a year into the local economy, $37 million a year into the local tax basin as well. That's a quick breakdown. I won't bore you. I know that you have it in your notes. The other thing about this resort is it's one of the few properties in British Columbia that could be built in phases, and that has to do with the topography of the land. So we can start with phase one within a very short period of time, be up and running and servicing the local clientele, and continue as the market responds to having this resort in the area, we can build it further and further. So the economic numbers are this: 20,000 construction jobs, yearly construction jobs over a 20-year period. That breaks down to roughly 1,000 construction jobs a year. So we're talking a mega project with its economic impacts. Over 2,200 full-time and part-time jobs for the ski hill itself. That doesn't include hotels and other activities. And 1.1 million annual visitors. There's two projects here. I'll wrap it up for you now. Thank you very much. But I just want to make it clear that we will be going to the Fraser Valley Regional District within the next 12 to 24 months with our plans for the uplands and building a master plan community there that is a independent project, but highly complementary to the all-season resort project itself. And obviously, we'll be keeping you acquainted with what the results of the public surveys said. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Wilson. I'll open the floor to any questions or comments from council at this point, if there are any. Councillor Schweinbans.
Thanks for the presentation. I think I might have missed it. The snow coverage up there. I know that Sasquatch and other areas have a problem with snow every once in a while.
Yes.
Some years they just get rained out too much.
Well, I grew
How
up
is it up
skiing
there?
in this
Yeah.
area, so yes, it's better. So if you take a look at, and I don't want to pick on any mountain locally here because we love our snow, our brethren in the industry. But if you take a look at, we're several hundred meters higher than Sasquatch is. We're several hundred meters higher at the top of where you'd be skiing from in our property than all the coastal mountains other than Whistler Blackcomb. Whistler Blackcomb has a glacier. It's a different kettle of fish altogether. So if you take a look at it, our skiable area is higher than that of Mount Baker. Not higher than Mount Baker because that's an incredibly high mountain, but where the ski hill on Mount Baker is, it's actually situated quite low. And it's fine because they have really good snowfall, but I would say very similar to Manning Park, which is known to have a fairly reliable snow line. And the same elevation within 60 meters, I believe.
Okay, thank you. And you mentioned that you've got the local First Nations on board as owners, or are they environmental monitors for you or consulting with you?
All of the above is the plan. So we are working right now with one of the local First Nations that will be doing the environmental monitoring for us and really taking over that area. And we're very excited to work with them. We also, there's 13 overlapping First Nations in the area. So it's a complex area for First Nations. Those 13 First Nations all have the ability to come into the project as equity stakeholders with the eventual conclusion of that being a First Nation majority-owned project of 51% First Nations ownership.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I just want to say that I'm generally supportive of something happening there. I agree the Metro Vancouver area could use another world-class resort of some sort. It's a fantastic area, and I think as council, we should pay attention to this because this is 15 minutes down the road potentially, and it's going to really impact us positively, I think, in the future. So good luck with your project.
Thank you kindly. If I could make one more comment, the former MLA, Kelly Padden, when I was speaking to her before, when she was still the MLA of the area, she mentioned that the district of Kent was having trouble finding doctors right now. And that was something that was a big issue. She looked at it and she said, you know, if there was a property offering like this, physicians might actually want to move to the area and we could probably service some of the surrounding communities. So just an interesting comment.
Thank you, Mayor Tallon. Through you to our presenter, thank you very much for the presentation. One thing that came to mind while I was listening to the presentation is the rollout of this. I see the potential for such a large increase in traffic along Highway 1. And I'm wondering if you have had discussions with the province and Ministry of Transportation to address that. Thank you.
A very timely question. Our initial studies through RRC, the company that we hired to do our economic studies, envisioned a 2% increase of traffic in the valley. And it was less than what we were expecting initially. And a 2% increase from what the people that are experts on this, which I am not, have said, won't be an earth-shattering change. However, if you take a look at the history of mega projects within the province, often these are used as catalysts in order to get the servicing that communities need. So for instance, the Sea to Sky Highway needed to be replaced and rebuilt for a long time before it happened. What happened to get that? The Olympics. It was an excuse for the province to buck up, spend the money, and get the project done. The mayor of Abbotsford, Henry Braun, the former mayor of Abbotsford, asked the very same question. He said, I love it. It'd be good for the region. What about traffic? Because we already have this massive problem on Highway 1. We said, we totally agree with you. So as we move to the next stage, which is formal application, it's where we get roll our sleeves up and do the litany of studies that are required by the government. Obviously, a big part of that is a MODI study, a Ministry of Transportation study, in order to turn over to the province to see exactly what the impact would be. We also know that we're probably going to have to do a lot of work on reconstructing the overpasses and the exits from the freeway that this would affect too. So the answer is, if harnessed by the local communities, it could be used as a tool to bring an extra couple of lanes out that are desperately needed.
Thank you. That was helpful. And just one other question, Mayor Tallon, if I may. Have you engaged our local MLA, Tony Luck? Is he fully on board or aware of the project? Thank you.
I have spoken to Tony, and I've also spoken to Alia Warbus in great detail, who Alia is the MLA of where we are at. So I will be meeting with Tony and Alia to do a presentation of the project, and I look forward to that opportunity. I've met Tony in passing a couple of times. Seems Tony is fairly pro-development, and I think, but I would let Tony answer for himself on that.
Fair enough. Thank you. Thank you, Mayor Tallon.
Thank you, Councillor Vital. I know, Councillor Fascio, you've got a question.
Thank you, sir. Through you, Your Worship. Thank you for the presentation. Look forward to seeing you at the Regional District. Does the Berrison 60-year plan affect this plan at all?
Sorry, say that
The
again?
Berrison 60-year plan at Sasquatch Mountain?
Oh, sorry, yes, the
That's
Sasquatch
on
60-year
the
plan.
same scale as this,
Yes.
but it's a 60-year plan. Does this sort of affect, or would it affect your plan in any way?
I don't believe it will. Again, usually what happens is when you take a look at especially ski properties or all-season resort properties, they tend to thrive when you cluster them together. Colorado is the best example of that, where you have 11 of the world's greatest resorts all within driving distance of themselves. You want that because it builds up the base and it builds up the visitors. So one year you fly into Colorado, you visit Steamboat, the next you visit Yale, the next you visit Aspen. There's always something more to do. It's very much like Orlando with theme parks. You know, you have Disney, Universal Studios, Epcot Center, SeaWorld. There's 54 other theme parks in Orlando, and they're all competing for the same tourism dollars, but people come to Orlando for the very reason of utilizing those amenities. So again, the pie grows. There's strong evidence. I spent a lot of time over the last 3 years in the Alps, meeting with resort operators out there. They do a really good job of working with each other in cross-promotion for regional activities, and they do very well with the cross-promotion. We believe there would be an amazing opportunity to work with the Berrisons and to work with Manning Park and other local mountains to see that happen. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Wilson, for your time and your
Thank you.
presentation. Much appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you for your time. Appreciate it.
We have a second delegation tonight, Mr. John Allen. Yes, Councillor Jackson.
I don't understand this delegation, Your Worship. I have in my hand here a public notice sent out, and any questions with reference to the procedure bylaw to send them in to our clerk, Amanda. And other people have complied for that. I don't understand why we're making an exception to it. I'd like an explanation, because I don't think we should be hearing this delegation when everybody else complies with what we've asked, and we're making an exception. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor Jackson. Mr. Allen, are you representing an organization tonight?
I'm representing the residents of Harrison Hot Springs. Do I have to have an organization behind me? I don't believe so. Delegations.
Mr. Allen, it's just a question. Obviously, delegations, the ones I've seen come before council have all been representing an organization. So I've checked with the corporate officer regarding procedures and bylaws. I don't believe, Councillor Jackson, that a delegation has to represent any particular organization.
May I proceed?
Please proceed, Mr. Allen.
Thank you. Starting at 7:25 p.m. Mr. Mayor, Council, I'd like to make a few comments on the proposed bylaw number 1216, being a bylaw to establish the rules and procedures for council of the Village of Harrison Hot Springs. My comments are motivated mostly by the fact that I have concerns not so much for the internal workings of council, but for the public access to council and the public interest in council meetings and the ability to attend and to participate. I don't have a comprehensive review of the bylaw because I've only been given 10 minutes. So I'll just hit a couple of things with your indulgence, and I'll refer to the pages of the bylaw where I wish to make a comment. Moving first to page number 5, item 10, Deputy Mayor. My recollection was that the statute requires that the mayor nominate somebody to be the deputy mayor, after which the council must vote for that person. And that's not what it says here, and I'm not quite sure why. Moving on to page 6 at the top, it says that for regular council meetings, the corporate officer must make the agenda available to council members by providing a copy of the agenda via email, and to the public by posting a copy of the agenda at the public notice posting places and the village website. I think that that needs clarification. In my experience as a councillor and as a mayor, it's really not very helpful to get an email with a 150-page agenda attached inside it. Because if I'm given 2 or 3 days to digest that, I really need to have a hard copy that I can write my margin notes on and ask questions about. And this does not say that the council members get a hard copy, and I believe that they should. So I think that the bylaw in that aspect is deficient. The councillors need to be able to digest the contents of the agenda, and they can best do so if it's a hard copy. On page number 8, item 16, 16C, it says on receipt of a delegation application, the corporate officer may schedule a delegate to a later meeting. This has always been the mayor's job. The mayor gets the request perhaps through the corporate officer. The mayor is the man who must chair, or the woman who must chair the meetings and organize the meetings. And it's the mayor's decision, in my opinion, as to which delegates, which delegations make it to the agenda. So I see this as an erosion of the mayor's responsibilities, and I'm not at all comfortable with having my application for a delegation to be handled by staff. Certainly it's a responsibility of the mayor, in my opinion, to do that. In the page number 10, sorry, I'm skipping page 10 and 11. On page number 12, item 21 says, voting, each member present, including the chair, shall have 1 vote. I think that since we're talking about council here, that shouldn't say chair, it should say the mayor, because there is some confusion about whether the mayor has a vote, and in fact, the mayor does vote or can vote on every issue. So there are 5 votes on council, not 4. So I think the language should just change to make that the mayor. On page 13, item 22E, item 1, it says that when a question is under consideration, no motion shall be received except for the following: to refer an item. I think that needs some clarification. Is it going to be referred to staff? Is it going to be referred to an advisory committee? Is it going to be referred to a consultant? So if we're going to be referring things, we need to say who is eligible for receiving that reference. So on item 24, question period, which is what we're doing we're not doing at the moment, it says that no more than 10 minutes be allocated. If people have taken the trouble to come to a council meeting, I think it's disrespectful to not allow them to ask a question. You've certainly limited the time for each question to 2 minutes, which means 5 people. If 6 people are there, I think the 6th and maybe the 7th person should be entitled to ask their question. And I also think that the minutes should record that person having taken the trouble to come to the council meeting and ask the question. At the moment, your minutes simply say some questions were asked, and I don't think that's sufficient, and I don't think it's respectful. Participation by electronic means of public during public question periods may be permitted at the discretion of the chair. I don't think that should be a discretionary matter. If somebody has attended by Zoom and they wish to ask the question, I think they should be given the right to ask the question, and it shouldn't be an item that is possibly denied them. On item page number 15, recess and adjournment, 26B, a motion to recess must state the approximate time for which the meeting will be reconvened. I just think that for grammar, that should be at which the meeting should be reconvened. We need to be clear in our language in these bylaws. Over on page 16, it says, B at the top of the page, a bylaw that is not included in the prepared agenda may only be introduced to council by unanimous vote of council. I think that that is not a good thing because of the fact that it means that we can get these ambush items on the agenda at the last minute with no public notice. And I think that a bylaw in particular needs public notice because it's going to be a law that governs the activities of the public in the village, and we, the public, are deserving of notice of that bylaw. I don't like the fact that the bylaw can be introduced at a meeting without any notice to the public. 28 on page 16, reading and adopting of bylaws. Another language issue here, only the title and the intended object of the bylaw must be read. I think the proper word there is objective. The objective is the part that sets out what the bylaw hopes to achieve. And it's not an object, it's an objective, and it should be read as such. On page 18, it says at the top H, a motion of council to adopt the report of the Committee of the Whole constitutes ratification of the motions contained therein. I really don't think that is a very good idea at all, because it means that if you receive the minutes of a meeting at which nobody else attended, just by receiving those minutes, you have approved whatever it is they recommended. And I believe that, be it a committee or a commission, if they're sending forward a recommendation to council, that needs to be discussed by the council at a public meeting so the public can understand exactly what is being voted on and who is voting for it. So I think that's a dangerous section of this bylaw that needs to be taken out. On the same page, 18, number 31, it lays out the agenda for standing and select committees and commissions, but it doesn't include any question period in that agenda. And I think if people attend those meetings, I think they have the right to ask a question, and it's disrespectful to not let them do that. On page 19, if you go down to J, it says individuals appointed to a committee or commission shall serve for, what does it say here, 4 years? Anyway, it doesn't, the copy that I have, that I took off the internet today, doesn't specify the term. I think 2 years is adequate. I know that you talked about 4-year terms, and that is a terribly bad thing because what you end up doing is you end up with the council appointing all their buddies to all the committees for the next 4 years. And at the end of that, if they all get turfed out, all the committees and commissions are turfed out at the same time. What we're looking for is continuity here and stability, and this is very much not in that interest. On item I, below that, or sorry, L, select committees and commission members wishing to resign must submit a resignation in writing to the Chief Administrative Officer. It's the council who appoints them, and it's the council to whom they should resign. And the proper procedures for them to write to council and say, I hereby resign. and for council to receive that by resolution and record it in the minutes. On item M, it says the mayor is an ex officio member of all committees and is entitled to vote at all meetings thereof. Maybe it's the definition section that's deficient here, but ex officio has meant in many of the organizations that I've served in, means a person sits at the committee but does not have a vote. So
Mr.
if that
Allen,
has
I'm wondering,
changed,
I need to interrupt you. I'm wondering if you could
sorry, I
conclude
can't hear
your
you.
if you could please conclude your statement in the next 90 seconds or so. We have other matters on the agenda. If you could complete, you've had 10 minutes. If you
Okay,
could
okay,
conclude,
I'm near the end. 33, public hearings. Public hearings are scheduled on a required basis by the corporate office to occur during a regular council meeting. I think that's a terribly bad idea. A public hearing is the opportunity for the public to address council on an issue of public interest and to have the time to do so. To try and jam that into the middle of a busy agenda such as tonight's would be counterproductive. On item page 21B, the order of business of public hearings has a section in here, number 6, that says that a report from the applicant, and too often this turns into a sales pitch by the applicant for the project, and I don't think that's appropriate at a public hearing, because the public hearing is for council to hear what the public has to say about the project, not to hear another sales pitch from the developer. I'm almost finished. This comes into number F. I think that any written submissions at a public hearing should be read aloud and read into the record and recorded in the minutes. And this particular bylaw does not allow that to happen. So those, Mr. Mayor, are some of my concerns about bylaw number 1216. I would urge you not to proceed with it tonight and to go back and review these comments and ask yourself if they really serve the public interest or they're just serving the council interest. And I believe that the public interest needs to take priority in that case. Thank you.
No, I don't have a question. I certainly concur with Councillor Jackson. I think technical amendments and a technical read-through of a draft bylaw, I'm not sure that's a good use of council time. I think, Mr. Allen, in the future, if you have technical comments and edits and questions concerning a draft bylaw, you'll get a much better and fulsome answer if they are put in writing and sent to myself, council, or the administration. Yeah. I'm prepared to move on to the next item in the agenda. The next item in the agenda, 8, correspondence. Can I have a motion to receive the correspondence?
Move, Your Worship.
Councillor Fascio, seconded by Councillor Vital. Discussion on the motion to receive the correspondence. I'll call the vote. All in favor? And that carries unanimously. Is there any business arising from the correspondence? Councillor Fascio, you have your light on.
Oh, sorry, sir.
I actually do. I would like, the correspondence we have is from Scott Gurney concerning signing on to a letter to Premier Eby and Minister Herbert, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, or Hebert, concerning the BC Fairs, Festivals, and Events Fund. I know the Harrison Festival Society has benefited from this fund in the past, and I believe the Harrison Agassiz Tourism Association also has benefited in the past as well. I think that's true. So I would like, I think there's merit in signing on to this letter and sending that off to Premier Eby and Minister Herbert.
Second your motion.
Councillor Fascio seconded the motion to send a letter that's suggested, seconded by Councillor Vital, and I know Councillor Swinemetz, I saw you earlier. Is there a comment or discussion on that motion? Councillor Vital.
Thank you, Mayor Talon. I just would also encourage, if it's not already be done or they haven't received it, that this letter and template be forwarded to our tourism office for their pursual also. Thank you.
Good suggestion, Councillor Vital. Councillor Schweinlands. Oh, no. Oh, I saw your light on. That's the only reason I went to you. Any further discussion? If not, I'll call a vote on the motion. All in favor, and that carries unanimously. We'll send that letter, and we'll make sure it's copied to the appropriate people. Item 10 on our agenda is reports of councillors, committees, committee of the whole, and commissions. Reports of councillors. Who would like to start tonight, if in fact anyone? Councillor Pacho.
Very short one this evening, Your Worship, just at the Fraser Valley Regional District evening meeting. There was a delegation from the Lower Fraser Floodplains Coalition. And funny, I was approached this evening by one of our residents regarding, has anything been done about the removal of the sediment from the Fraser River? And I gave him the story of many years ago with all mayors in Chilliwack, with the federal government and provincial government, and they showed us the door. You ain't going to move. And I think Mayor Hames was the mayor at the time, said if we could at least remove 300,000 cubic meters a year, it would help. But they were against it, so we said there will be a catastrophe one day, and unfortunately those poor people in Abbotsford had to put up with it. But that was the delegation, the Lower Fraser. There's 600 kilometers of dikes and infrastructure in the Fraser Valley, and they're looking for the provincial government and federal government to come forward with more monies to do a management control over these areas and the critical infrastructure that's behind these dikes as well. So that was a very good presentation. The other one was the which I, through you, if I can hand to our staff, is the supplementary copies of electoral areas in regards to emergency routes. And it's, you know, when people keep saying that Harrison is the only one with one way in and one way out, well, there's many areas in the Fraser Valley Regional District areas where there are only one way in and one way out. Some are actually crossing people's front doorstep to get out of the way. So evacuation complexities, that's what they put together on this. And they've also identified the areas of concern where, as we've said on many times, how many people come together in case of an emergency from the provincial governments. And it's all here in black and white, and it's a great, there's designated places within a 10-kilometer Chilliwack Lake Road and 38 kilometers up near Chilliwack Lake Provincial Park, where it's only one way in and one way out. And in there also, it gets very busy with potential visitor population of 2,000 as well. So it's, and of course you have the unfortunate homeless encampments as well to deal with. So if I may later just hand this to our Manager of Community Services, it might be some more information when she puts together that booklet that I believe they're doing for the village. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor Pacho. Councillor Vital.
Thank you, Mayor Talon. On February 20th, I attended the Agassiz Harrison Healthy Communities meeting. Just some updates. On March 18th and 19th, a strategy planning meeting is scheduled to discuss the recruitment and retention of healthcare providers. It is being hosted by Fraser Health at either Hope or Seabird Island. And I have been informed that representatives from village staff and councillor are scheduled to attend. The Stehelas Eco Lodge will be investigating a food security program. And some good news, the CBC Food Bank Challenge, which took place over the holiday season, resulted in $1,800 being distributed and donated to our local food bank. And the youth subcommittee is now up and running with youth representation from both our community and from Kent. Also on February 20th, I attended Lower Mainland Local Government Association Executive Board meeting. These meetings are going to become a little more frequent as we gear up to our annual conference. Finalizing of the conference program should be available soon, and I'll certainly distribute it to council and staff when it's available. On one other note about the conference, I had been working for a few months, and our Letsamot C2C forum is well respected throughout the province. So with that, I put together a list of contributors on a panel, which will provide a bit of a historical viewpoint on our Letsamot C2C, some successes and barriers still faced, and some suggestions on how other municipal councils, if they're interested in forming a C2C. And with that, Mayor Tallon, I'm pleased to say that Councillor Facio has agreed to sit on that panel along with Mayor Pranger and also Chief Harris from Seabird and Grand Chief Willie Charlie from Stehelas. So my expectation is that all of council will attend that one. So thank you very much, Mayor Tallon.
Thank you, Councillor Vital. Councillor Swinemans.
No report, Your Worship.
Councillor Jackson.
Thank you, Your Worship. I attended the last RMI meeting, setting the plans for 2025 provincial government budget tomorrow. So hopefully around the beginning of April, we'll find out how much cash we're going to get and we have to spend. It's a very exciting committee for me because I was involved on day one. We had an in-camera meeting, which I attended. Also dropped in this morning to the finance meeting. It was very well done. Hats off to our staff for the job that they're doing. I really, really appreciate it. And thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor Jackson. Corporate Officer, any reports from committees, the other things, commissions? I'll move on to the next agenda item, which is a report from the mayor. A few things to report out tonight. On Sunday morning, on the 23rd of February, myself and the CAO attended an emergency planning deployment, mock deployment on the Canadian Forces Base in Chilliwack, where they got to show off drones, a whole bunch of jargon, acronyms, and a whole bunch of high-tech equipment for communicating in real time for first responders. And it was a very interesting presentation, and there's a ton of technology out there, and it's very interesting to see. So looking forward to following up with staff and our first responders on some of the things I heard there. The RCMP detachment, as we heard last council meeting, has some new officers, and I met them all with our CAO on the 24th of February, so they're keen and eager to get at it, and I'm not sure who the impassioned officer is for enforcing traffic violations, but it's one of them. It could be all of them. So they seem ably up for the work, and I'm sure you'll see them in town this summer and with the grease patrols. I attended with Councillor Jackson the Resource Development Strategy Committee meeting, and I agree that's really exciting work and really interesting stuff. On the 27th, a delegation from Walnut Grove, students from Walnut Grove, are doing a project, and they sort of peppered my office, and almost anyone's office in the village, the CAO, community services manager, me on several times. They're doing, I understand that one of their teachers had assigned them, go forth and look at Harrison Hot Springs and what they're doing to prepare and mitigate for wildfire risk. I would have hats off to the four gentlemen who came all the way from Surrey, I believe, to Harrison Hot Springs by bus, and were in the council chambers waiting for the meeting 15 minutes early. So somehow they managed to take buses, and they were pretty happy about that, and they toured around town. So we also connected with people remotely, so I'm sure their teacher will be, I would give them full marks for initiative, coming all the way out and meeting us in person. So that was a really enjoyable meeting. We got to talk about things the village is doing. And on the 28th, last week Friday, myself and the CAO met with the Resort General Manager and Director of Marketing, as well as Grand Chief Willie Charlie, to continue the conversation about the hot springs at the source, opportunities for collaboration at the pool, and a couple of other things. Another good meeting, respectful meeting. Looks like there's could be some opportunities ahead for the village to work with both the resort and Stehelas with some public information and hopefully some education about what's appropriate to do in and around the source of the hot springs there and what would be inappropriate to do. And we're hoping some opportunities for signs and public education, telling the stories of Stehelas and just warning people and urging caution and respectful behavior in that area. So that was a good meeting. Also had a chance to tour the public pool and the recent renovations that the resort has done there in the lobby area, and had a peek through the window and saw some of the work they did inside the pool as well. Some conversations about opportunities to enhance the public experience in the hot springs at that pool, and yeah, so those conversations are starting. It's certainly on the radar of the resort, as it is ourselves and Stehelas as well. And earlier today, I attended the open house for the financial plan. I know it's been reported that there were no councillors present, but I was here for the whole thing. I missed 2 minutes because I was distracted by the lake this morning. It was absolutely gorgeous. So I don't have an explanation for that other than perhaps I've gone overboard on transparency and I was unable to be seen. That's the end of my report. Takes us to agenda item 12, corporate officer reports from staff.
Thank you. I'm first up this evening with a release of closed meeting resolutions report.
Please proceed.
There's a bit of background there in the discussion. So we recently posted some vacancies for the Age-Friendly Committee and the Advisory Planning Commission, which were reviewed by council. In addition, there's some background there regarding the boat launch operation RFP, which closed February 12th, 2025. And so the recommendation is that the following closed meeting resolutions from the February 25th, 2025 special closed council meeting be received for information at the March 3rd, 2025 regular council meeting, that Judy Barron, Hannah Godora, Elizabeth Weber, and Marlene Reimer be appointed to the Age-Friendly Committee, that Dennis Hill and Dean Robertson be appointed to the Advisory Planning Commission, and that the boat launch operations bid be awarded to Harrison Eco Tours.
Move recommendation.
Moved by Councillor Fascio, seconded by Councillor Schweinbenz. Discussion on the motion. Councillor Schweinbenz.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. very excited to see these people join the advisory committee. I think it's going to reinvigorate the committee, and that's fantastic, the commission, sorry, and as well as the 4 individuals with the age-friendly committee. With regards to the boat launch, I think you know some of my resistance to the boat launch and some of the activities that have not taken place there over the past few years. So I'm very excited about this new change. I think it's an opportunity for us to rebrand the boat launch, to educate people better, and to really push this as a primary asset. And I think the operations of it will be fantastic and a big improvement over the few years. So very supportive of this.
Thank you, Councillor Schweinbenz. Councillor Vital.
Thank you, Mayor Talon. I just want to offer my congratulations to the new appointments, to the Age-Friendly Committee, and to the Advisory Planning Commission. We don't always have the ability to see who is on Zoom, but I know 2 of the successful applicants are here in the gallery tonight. So congratulations, and I look forward to your reports. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Vital. Any further discussion? I'll call the vote. All in favor, and that carries unanimously. Next item, Corporate Officer.
The next item, I have a report regarding the disposal of surplus items and equipment policy.
Please proceed.
Thank you. Attached to this report is a amended policy number 111 regarding disposal of surplus items and equipment, which incorporates a resolution made at the February 3rd regular council meeting to remove the public auction requirement and incorporate provisions for a sealed bidding process. I'd just like to draw council's attention to the top of that policy there. There was a February 18, 2025 date there that would reflect the correct date of the amendment if passed this evening. And so the recommendation is that council approve the amendments to disposal of surplus items and equipment policy 1.11 as presented.
Move the recommendation, Your Worship.
Moved by Councillor Fascio, seconded by Councillor Schweinbenz. Any discussion to that motion? I'll call the vote. All in favor? And that carries unanimously. Next item, Corporate Officer.
Moving on to item 12C, we have report of Community Services Manager regarding special event and Memorial Hall policies and fees.
Please proceed.
Thank you, Mayor Talon. The village has 2 policies that govern special events. Policy number 1.17, use of public and municipal property for outdoor-based event, and policy number 4.7, Memorial Hall use for events held inside Memorial Hall. Miscellaneous fee bylaw number 1049/2014 sets the rental fees, and Schedule D, which applies to these 2 policies, has not been updated since the bylaw was first adopted in 2014. In reviewing these 2 special event policies in recent years, staff have identified the need for clarification and further direction from council to ensure that the policies are working for the community. So for the public and municipal property policy discussion, there have been several large events over the last few years, including those offered by partner organizations and external groups that have required substantial services from the village. While staff are aware of the benefit of hosting community events, it's important to ensure that costs are recovered through the permit process. In gathering some feedback from our Public Works Department, as well as from event organizers, staff have identified a potential solution to the waste collection and portable toilet rental issues. Staff would like to propose updates to the policy and fee schedule to require groups or events of a certain size to pay the village for the additional services required. Village staff would then liaise directly with the providers and ensure that site drop-offs occur at the desired locations. Other items in this policy that lack clarity and/or have been identified as barriers in event planning include overnight vehicle parking within parks or on village lands, camping, and vendor sales. Some of these events have been taking place for a number of years in the community, and their past activities have been grandfathered in to continue to occur. Staff will seek to clarify the policy to ensure that it is clear and consistent amongst event requests. The village office also receives inquiries about acquiring a permit for smaller events such as a birthday party or family gathering at the beach. The current policy does not state the number of attendees required in order to apply for a permit. In reviewing other municipalities' policies, staff are recommending that any event with less than 50 attendees that will not require additional staff services and will not render the space unusable for others should be considered use consistent with public spaces and would not require a permit. Smaller groups are often looking for a reservable space in order to ensure that they have a picnic table area available. And so with the recent installation of the covered picnic shelter at Spring Park, staff would like to include the rental of this space in the updated policy and miscellaneous fee bylaw. Without reserving the space, this shelter would be available on a first-come, first-served basis. For Memorial Hall use policy, as mentioned, the miscellaneous fee bylaw outlines user fees and damage deposit amounts for user groups to rent Memorial Hall. There have been many discussions regarding the rental process and expressed concerns about the required fees and availability. Staff would like to present options to Council for review regarding the rental categories and associated fees after researching some similar policies and bylaws in other municipalities. In 2024, revenue from special event permits and Memorial Hall rentals totaled $10,220, an increase of 14.3% from the year prior. Staff budget around $45,545 annually in order to maintain and operate Memorial Hall. So these costs do emphasize the importance of retaining revenue. The goal is not to make the use of the hall cost prohibitive, but to ensure that user fees align with the value of the hall and can meaningfully contribute to the upkeep and maintenance. So there are 3 recommendations. Would you like me to go one by one for discussion?
It's a good question. Yeah, let's go one by one just in case. We'll keep it simple because I'm tired and won't get confused. Please proceed. Move the first recommendation, prepare updated policies regarding public and municipal property and Memorial Hall. Seconded by Councillor Schweinbenz. Any discussion to that motion?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, 2 things struck me about this. Number one, I haven't seen the rate schedule, so I'm looking forward to seeing the changes. But I mean, tourism and festivals and event are a huge part of our community, and I hope that it only grows in the future. So I just want to make sure, irrespective of fees, that we have a simple process for groups to follow, whether it be Sasquatch Days or fireworks or the Dragon Boaters. So it's not an onerous rate and it's an easy process for them to follow. That's number one. And number 2, that regular community groups maybe get a price break. So for instance, if there's a group every Thursday morning that plays Canesta 50 weeks of the year, that their rate reflects that they're community-based and not using a lot of resources here. I just want to make sure it's affordable and accessible to them. Thank you.
Any other discussion? I'll call the vote on the motion. All in favor? And that carries unanimously. The next motion is that staff include rental information for the newly installed picnic shelter in Spring Park and associated policy and fee bylaw. Motion to that effect. Moved by Councillor Vital, seconded by Councillor Jackson. Discussion on that one. Seeing no discussion, I'll call the vote. All in favor, and that carries unanimously. And the third motion, staff be directed to draft amendments to the miscellaneous fee bylaw 1049/2014.
Move, Your Worship.
Moved by Councillor Fascio, seconded by Councillor Vital. Discussion on that motion. Seeing none, I'll call the vote. All in favor, and that also carries unanimously. Thank you, Community Services Manager. We look forward to those reports and recommendations. Corporate Officer, next item, please.
Next, we have a report from our Director of Operations regarding primary care facility renovation contract award.
Please proceed, Director of Operations.
Thank you. In September of 2024, Council directed staff to proceed with a 4-office renovation plan for a primary care facility at 102-160 Lillooet Avenue. The village issued a request for proposals on January 20th for the primary care facility renovation work. By the closing date of February 5th, 18 proposals were received. Staff evaluated the proposals and have awarded the contract to Kurtz Construction. The building permit has recently been received from the Fraser Valley Regional District, approving the design which will allow construction to commence this week. Project completion is targeted for May 2025. The primary care facility design includes 4 office areas, a washroom, and a waiting room. To construct this facility, there will be upgrades that include plumbing, heating, electrical, framing, insulation, paint, flooring, millwork, doors, and a new T-bar ceiling. The new facility will be occupied by Fraser Health and will host a nurse practitioner 1 day per week. This will provide a higher level of medical care to Harrison residents in a convenient location within the village. The village is exploring additional partnerships with other agencies that provide social, well-being, and protective services for Harrison residents. The RFP submitted by Kurtz Construction for the primary care facility renovation work quotes the project at a cost of $156,730 and will be funded by surplus. This line item is included in the 2025 financial plan. The recommendation of this report is that the Director of Operations report dated March 3rd, 2025 regarding the primary care facility renovation contract award be received for information.
Sorry, moved.
Second.
Councillor Schweinbenz. Discussion on that motion. Seeing none, I'll call the vote. All in favor? Thank you, Director of Operations. Corporate Officer, next item.
The next item is a report of Chief Financial Officer regarding council remuneration analysis.
Please proceed.
Thank you, Your Worship. At the January 29th, 2025 Committee of the Whole meeting, Council directed staff to prepare draft provisions to the council remuneration policy and as well include a comparison for remuneration for similar sized municipalities. Staff researched public information for as many similar sized municipalities as possible. It did prove challenging because there isn't really consistent information and some of the information out there is outdated. Staff was, however, able to get pretty solid information for about 15 other similar BC municipalities, including both resort and non-resort communities. So basically, when the highest and lowest comparator is removed, average mayor annual remuneration is $43,344, councillor $21,191. It's important to note that these numbers are between 2022 and 2024. So many municipalities do build in a annual consumer price index increase that wouldn't be reflected here. For comparison, the 2025 remuneration for village council is $44,443 for mayor and $22,222 for councillor. So this is a very high level comparison, not scientific by any means, but if council wishes a more fulsome review, an external consultant could be retained, a task force could be established, would be a couple of options. So basically, what staff is requesting that if council wishes to revise the council remuneration policy, that staff receives some direction on what portions would be revised, and we'll bring that back for further consideration. The other point is if council wishes to make amendments to the current elected official remuneration in the financial plan that we're looking at tonight, that will need to be amended, which that can be possible tonight as well. So the recommendation is that the Chief Financial Officer's report dated March 3rd, 2025 regarding council remuneration analysis be received for information. Thank you.
Your Worship,
Moved by Councillor Fascio.
I
Second.
would, oh, sorry, can
I
I'd
think
like
I
to
need a
receive
seconder.
this as noted, but I would also receive this and make a recommendation for amendments. Or do you want that separate?
So receive the report and you're moving amendments. Can I ask specifically to what?
To the remuneration, and also there wasn't I believe when this was originally discussed was the small increase on the meal allowances as well. So I want to make the recommendation to move forward with the original discussion, and then we ask the staff to come back with a review, which they've done, and thank you very much. But the thing is with these, first I better wait because I'm speaking before we've got a seconder.
Yeah, I just wanted to understand the motion. So you're moving, we received the report. Can we deal with your motion? Can we receive the report and then deal with the follow-up,
Okay,
follow-up matters
fair enough.
secondly,
Yep.
Councillor Fascio?
Sure.
So a first motion to receive the report, a seconder for that. Councillor Jackson seconds. Discussion on receiving the report. I'll call the vote. All in favor, and that carries unanimously. Councillor Fascio, you have a second motion.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, the motion would be that the remuneration for the mayor and council was originally discussed of $100 a week, which is $14 a day. And the one thing that these reports don't show, besides they're not up to date, is that, and it'd be impossible to find out, would be that nobody knows from these municipalities in how many hours councillors or the mayor spends on village work. So it could vary tremendously. You know, we could be doing a lot more than say Bowen Island, when they got 4,200 people there. So I think council should consider that as well. As you well know, we're not paid any extra allowances or pensions when we are not re-elected or even get CPP. So, and also we lost the 1/3 that we used to receive from the federal government. So I don't think this is an absorbent amount, $14 a day, $100 a week. So my amendment is that the remuneration for mayor and council be increased that amount, and that $10 be added also extra on the meal allowances.
If I can just summarize, Councillor Fascio, just before I look for a seconder, you're moving that council remuneration, the policy that guides that, be amended to provide for an increase to councillors' remuneration of $100 a week and and $10 more per day for meals.
Not $10 per day when you go on a trip. It only really relates to when we go to conferences.
Right.
Roughly, yeah.
The meal
Yeah,
allowance.
meal allowances, yes.
Is that sufficiently clear, Corporate Officer?
That's $4,800 a year, if you want to put it.
CEO, I just want to make sure I've got the motion straight so for staff.
Thank you, Your Worship. I believe the amendment is $100 per week per council, per member of council, as well as $10 per meal, which would be $10 for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. I believe that's what Councillor Fascio is trying to.
Correct.
Yeah.
Thank you for the clarification. Is that motion clear? Is there a seconder to that motion? Seconded by Councillor Vital. Discussion to the motion. Councillor Vital.
Thank you, Mayor Tallon. I also would like to make an amendment to the motion that staff look and research our expense limits. We all know that increase in expenses for conferences, registration and hotel rooms is getting more expensive than what it was a couple of years ago. So my amendment would be to also request staff research and give a comparison and recommend, if so, an increase in our expense accounts. Thank you.
Councillor Vital, I'm wondering, for your consideration, if we can deal with Councillor Fascio's motion to increase the remuneration, as the motion states, and come back to your suggestion on research for conferences and those kind of things to ensure the budget is appropriate after we deal with this first motion.
That's fine, Mayor Tallon, thank you.
I'll make sure we have room for that. Any other discussion on the motion put forward by Councillor Fascio? Councillor Schweinvans.
Thank you, Mayor Tallon. I'm new to public service. I certainly didn't get into it for the money. The money's not very good. You know, when you keep track of your time, to Councillor Fascio's comment about hours, it really varies. I mean, keeping track, it's anywhere between 12 and 20 hours, and I don't know if that's reflective of the rest of council. 12 to 20 hours per week. And of course, we'll go to conferences and that sort of thing, which is more time. From looking at the data, I think we're in the sweet spot of where we should be. And I don't know that I'd support any changes at this time.
Thank you, Councillor Schweinvans. Looking at the information provided by staff, I don't think this is the type of job or responsibility that boils down to hours. Yes, hours does come in, but it's a different nature. The beast, it's a different role, different responsibility, and compensated accordingly. When I look at this, and I think the assessment here dropping out the high and the low, when I look at those numbers, I see them effectively in line with the remuneration we have today. And being 4 months into the mayor's chair, I don't mind looking at this again in a different context, maybe in a year or so, but I don't think, I'm uncomfortable. I don't see a problem that needs to be addressed right now, given the information provided, so I wouldn't be supporting this motion. Any other comments on the motion? Councillor Jackson.
Thank you, Worship. Right now, I'm a little uncomfortable. I'd like to see a more comprehensive report come back to us. I know how much time I put in and everybody else around the table, and yes, there are no benefits from doing it, but at this particular time, I'd like to see more information. I'm not opposed to it, I'm just not comfortable with it. So that I'd like to have this referred back to staff to come back with a more comprehensive report, and if they can somehow dig out the time element. Other councillors, they put a lot of time in. We're not remunerated for it, but we all know that going in. But I would just like to see some additional information. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor Jackson. If I might suggest that when Councillor Vital gets to her motion for additional information, that perhaps we build a full motion seeking that. Further discussion. Councillor Fascio.
I'm prepared to change my motion to have a more comprehensive report brought back by staff as Councillor Jackson suggested.
Thank you, Councillor Fascio. Perhaps what we suggest is we call the vote, and if it fails, then we can have a robust motion on staff doing some research on remuneration and conferences and those things. I'll call the vote on the motion. All in favor of the motion? Motion, all opposed? And the motion fails unanimously. I think that's a first for our council, if you're keeping score at home. And now I know there's a second motion. And do you want me to try and summarize, or Councillor Vital, would you like to try and gather the various ideas in one motion?
Thank you, Mayor Tallon. I think if Councillor Jackson wants to put forward a motion for more information, certainly researching the expenses with attending conferences and hotel accommodation can be included in that. Thank you.
If I can summarize, I'll try and summarize and fill in blanks, and corporate officer hopefully makes sense of what we're saying. A motion to direct staff to do some research on the budget council has for attending conferences and associated costs with those conferences, and B, a more complete assessment or comparison of remuneration for comparable villages or municipalities in the province. Does that motion, if I move that, would someone second that, and would that cover the bases? Would that be enough? And corporate officer, is that sufficiently clear for staff? Seeing nods. I'll move that, seconded by Councillor Jackson. Discussion on that motion. CAO Cook.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. If I may, because staff did do an assessment in the timelines that they were allotted, and I believe the request from our finance officer was for council to consider perhaps engaging a external agency to do a more a comprehensive analysis of communities, and that way I think it might, I'm not sure what the fees are associated with that, but if we could get a direction of that, then perhaps we would be coming back with some information that council could support.
Thank you, CAO Cook. That's an interesting idea. Trying to think how to proceed here, because that's a little different than the motion. Can we proceed with the motion as stated and seconded, and then we can come back to perhaps give some additional guidance on how the additional information may be provided to us, and whether we direct staff to engage someone external. So with that clear, we'll move on the motion for additional information. Any further discussion on that motion? Councillor Swinebands.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I looked at the policy today. It was redone in, I think, January of 2023. Don't quote me on that. And it seemed adequate. The conferences, hotels are pre-booked by a corporate officer for us, so I don't know that any per diems would be relevant there. I'm happy to do with whatever council agrees to, but it just seemed to me that it was fairly well updated about 2 years ago. And I'm not sure if I'd be comfortable making many changes, perhaps in 1 year, when a new council will be elected in that calendar year. But as it stands now, as I said, I think we're in the sweet spot where we should be.
Any other discussion to the motion? I'll call the vote. All in favor of getting some more information? All opposed? Councillor Swinebands opposed. The motion carries. The second motion, if I understood the CAO for some guidance, I'll try and summarize it. Motion to direct staff to make a recommendation concerning hiring a consultant to provide advice on council remuneration. Would that be sufficient? Make a recommendation that we can see. Is there a seconder to that motion?
Yeah, sure.
Seconded by Councillor Jackson. Any discussion on the motion to direct staff to report back on options for a consultant? Seeing no other discussion, I'll call the vote on that. All in favor? 3 in favor, opposed, and that motion carries. Corporate officer, I think we're on agenda item 13. Please proceed.
Yes, thank you. That's right. Moving on to bylaws, we have a report from our Chief Financial Officer regarding the 2025 to 2029 financial plan, bylaw number 1220, 2025.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. So we're here tonight to talk about the budget again. for the third time. So hopefully everybody's interested. Staff introduced the draft 2025-2029 financial plan on January 29th. And then it was subsequently given first and second reading on February 18th. Staff held a budget open house this morning here at Memorial Hall. And since the budget came for first and second reading, there was one change. And basically it relates to how revenue and expenses are recognized for the boat launch. It used to run all through the FVRD, and they paid us net profits basically. Now the village will be controlling and operating through another contractor the boat launch. So basically we up the revenues, up the expenses, but the bottom line doesn't change. The public has been invited to submit feedback and questions on the proposed plan throughout the budgeting process, including at the budget open house today. As of this moment, there was no official feedback on related to specifically this financial plan received. Council, well, I'll read the recommendation first, and then council may wish to open the floor to both Zoom and the public here for one last chance to comment or provide feedback on the plan. So ultimately, the recommendation will be that the 2025 to 2029 financial plan bylaw number 1220, 2025 be given third reading as amended.
So moves, Your Worship.
Moved by Councillor Fascio, seconded by Councillor Swinevans. I would like to open the floor for the opportunity for any public to ask questions concerning this at this point. Seeing, I should ask on Zoom, sorry, thank you.
If anybody on Zoom has any feedback regarding the financial plan, press the raise your hand button. Nobody on Zoom, Your Worship.
Councillor Vital.
Thank you, Mayor Talon. Just before we go to public comments, I do have one question for our financial officer. If you could refer to page 2 of the financial plan, which is also 79 in the agenda. Under expenditures for council, I know that there has been some considerable confusion on this total amount. So I'm just through you to our Chief Financial Officer. Can you perhaps explain, I notice under my name that 2024 budget was 32,688 and up to 34,166 for 2025. Perhaps you could just explain a little bit further what that amount all encompasses. Thank you.
Chief Financial Officer.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship, through to Councillor Vital. There are multiple variables that contribute to the total expenses that you see in the financial plan per elected official. I'll run through them quickly because there's a number of them. So we have the base remuneration, and that's the base remuneration is what we talked about in the previous report, and that's what we did the comparables on. We also have benefits included in there, and then we go into the kind of the fringe type of things. There's mileage, meals, accommodation, commercial transportation, parking, per diems, and this is related to conferences, technology allowance, and membership fees, and course and seminar registration. So that's all inclusive of the number you're seeing here in the financial plan.
Thank you, Chief Financial Officer. Yeah, the budget items and remuneration they're related, but one's not your pay stub. Any other discussion from council? Councillor Swinevans.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. through you to CFO. There's a lot of variability in legal fees. Can you describe why that might be? I'm just curious. It was very high last year, $135,000, and it seems lower this year. Do you think that it's going to continue to be variable over the years? It was quite low a few years ago and then got high last year. Is there a reason for that, and can we expect more variability going forward?
Chief Financial Officer?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Talon, through to Councillor Schweinbenz. Yes, you'll definitely notice last year the actual legal costs were extremely high. That was related to a number of ongoing legal items that were being worked through. When we budget, we don't know what we don't know. So obviously, we hope that we can keep legal fees down in 2025, but I guess, you know, that depends on what comes our way. Hopefully that answers your question.
Councillor Schweinbenz.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll just finish with this. I wanted to thank CFO Scott for his patience with me. I've got a lot of questions. This was the first time I've been through this, and there's so many line items, and I think I had a question on most of them. So thank you for a great job you've done, and I think it's a very conservative plan, probably more conservative than I'd like to see, but it's fantastic, and thanks for your patience with all your explanations.
Any further discussion on the motion? Public, we called for that earlier, and there were no questions from the public, and I wanted the public to go before council discussed, so they'd have the benefit of any public comments, and there were none. I'll call the vote. All in favor of the motion, and that carries unanimously. Next item, Corporate Officer.
Thank you. Moving on to item 13B, which is the report of corporate officer regarding council procedure bylaw number 1216, 2025.
Please proceed.
Thank you. There's some background there. So this bylaw has been before council twice since January. I'd like to thank council for your feedback from the last February 13th, 2025 special council meeting. So what you'll see attached to this report is a culmination of that initial discussion with council and then the subsequent meeting last month. I'm not going to go through all of the changes. You'll see that there are track changes in the bylaw for ease of reference there, but I do want to highlight a couple for council. In this updated draft, there's a new definition for the CAO, as that position is now referred to with regard to committee and commission member resignations. The wording regarding teleconferencing was changed slightly from the resolution to amend this section that was passed at the February 13th council meeting, and that was just after further review. It didn't work the way the wording was, so it now just says teleconferencing enabling the member to participate verbally, and that's in addition to attending by Zoom. And then the last amendment that I'd like to bring council's attention to is section 33F, and that's a new addition that came about while staff were reviewing the new development procedures bylaw, which is on this agenda later this evening. That same section can be found right now in the development procedures bylaw, and the recommendation is to incorporate it into here and have no provisions for public hearings in the development procedures bylaw, just so that there's one bylaw that addresses a particular issue. Council has discussed before the notice requirements for this council procedure bylaw. So notice went out on February 20th, 2025 by all the public notice boards, website, and a direct mail out to mailboxes in the village. Since that time, when I wrote this report, there were no public submissions. We did receive one written one today that I have provided council a copy with as an addendum. It's also available on the website and copies at the back of the room. I just wanted to highlight a couple of the comments that were received in that written submission. That was from Mr. Alan Garneau, and he makes several points. So Just with respect to late items, one question was how those would be distributed. So most late items do not have associated documentation. However, if they do, ideally I would have that beforehand and have hard copies available, similar to what we did this evening. Alternatively, we can always put it up on Zoom for council to review. The proposed bylaw allows everyone one chance to speak to an item other than the mover of a motion, who is permitted a 3-minute time frame to respond. That is the village's current practice as well in the current bylaw. And I take note of the comments that this restricts debate. This clause is very common in order to put an end to a circular discussion and to continue moving business forward. Point of privilege and requests for information are permitted under Robert's rules, and the process for point of order is set out in the charter. And in addition, the wording of section 21 regarding voting is also in line with the charter as well. There were several comments regarding committee of the whole, and just to clarify for council, I'm not aware of any legal challenge to committee of the whole meetings that are scheduled regularly or called ad hoc as needed. It's a very common practice. Some other local governments will adopt a regular committee of the whole schedule. In addition to that, as council is aware, there was a delegation earlier this evening from Mr. Allen. Happy to answer any questions that council has that arose out of that delegation. And so the recommendation is that council procedure bylaw number 1216/2025 be given third reading as amended.
Thank you, Corporate Officer. The moved by Councillor Jackson, seconded by Councillor Fascio. Discussion to the motion.
I have some amendments to do. Should I do it, or you want that done separately?
You see some guidance here. We have a mover. So Councillor Fascio, I misunderstood. You weren't seconding the motion. You are proposing a different motion.
No, I'm second the motion, but can I bring this up at discussion point now, or do you want me to bring it back as a separate motion to amend?
I seek some guidance from our corporate officer to do this properly, because I know the motion is for third reading. So corporate officer, some assistance.
Thank you, Mayor Tallon. Yes, before it's given third reading, council should make some amendments. So if the amendments are to add something to the bylaw, then I would recommend that council procedure bylaw number 1216/2025 be given third reading as presented with the following amendments, and then Councillor Fascio can incorporate his proposed amendments.
I know we have a motion on the floor. Councillor Jackson, would you retract your motion and replace it with what the corporate officer summarized?
Yes, Your Worship.
Thank you. The original motion is retracted. We have a new motion. And Councillor Fascio, will you second the new motion with the amendments?
Well, yes, Your Worship.
I guess we need to know what the amendments are. So will that come out in discussion? I'm hoping. Okay. So we have a motion and a seconder. I'll open the floor to discussion on that motion.
Thank you, Your Worship. My first, and we had discussed this previously, and the duration of committee meetings and the times. Now, general discussion last month was, are they going to be every month, every 2 months, or every 3 months? Are they going to be in the morning or early afternoon? Taking into consideration that now we have several committees where we never used to have them before, and it takes up quite a bit of staff time at all these committee meetings, including the commission as well. So my first motion would be to have the committee meetings every 2 months, either at 10 o'clock in the morning or 2 p.m. in the afternoon.
if I understand correctly, you want to see the council procedure bylaws.
Bylaw
when it speaks-
include that
and-
under committees.
And precisely state the time
Yes.
of the meetings for committees. Councillor Swinbanks.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Councillor Fasher. Which item are you referencing here? Which page or
It'll be under
item?
committees.
What number?
That's page. Well, it's not referenced yet. I am bringing it forward. Committee of the whole Committee of the Whole meetings. That's page 102, 103. Committee and commissions, page 104, the bottom numbers I'm giving you. So that's all to do with committees, and it also includes the commission as well.
Councillor Fascio, I think I'm a little uncomfortable prescribing restrictions. I think right now, we can break into committee of whole at any time, and it doesn't have to be 10 in the morning or 2 in the afternoon. And regarding committees and commissions, being prescriptive on when, I take the point about the demands on staff, but we all sit on these committees from time to time. I think it wouldn't serve the committees well to be prescriptive about meeting every 2 months or specifying the time in our council procedure bylaw. I know the Resort Development Strategy Committee has a deadline of April, and we're hoping to meet probably another 2 times between now and then that committee goes dormant until we need a new resort development strategy or we're considering changing it. And I worry that the full representation and the people from the village that have volunteered their time, being prescriptive like that may preclude them from participating on the committees. And
Then may I suggest it be at the call of the chair, but that we should have the times there. I'm making reference again to our staff. You know, they could be doing a 15, 16-hour day sometimes if they go into the evenings, these meetings. But during the day, these type of meetings will probably be held in the village chambers, and it gives the opportunity, if questions come up from the committees regarding certain subjects, matters that they're not at hand on the table, they can go to their office and grab these for you to clarify any comments from the committee members. So I think there should be at least a time. If you want to leave it at the call of the chair, that's fine. I'll leave the other portion out of every 2 or 3 months. But I think there should be a time when the committees should meet.
thank you, Councillor Fascio. Yeah, again, I'm uncomfortable being prescriptive in our council procedure bylaw. I think if we're chairing committees or participating on committees, we can have the discipline to set committee meetings that, well, one, work for the committee, because we've got volunteers and their schedules, we have to find ways to make schedules work. And I am just uncomfortable with being so prescriptive in the council procedure bylaw for that. I think there's discipline we can have as committee representatives and chairing to try and find times and being sensitive to staff demands and those things as well.
Your worship, maybe it would be more prudent to have these 3 recommendations referred back to staff, brought back to council, because we can always in future do an amendment to the procedure bylaw. That way it would give everybody the opportunity to see the proposals are good, but we could get more clarity rather than trying to fit them into a bylaw that we've worked on this infinitum. I'd like to get this done and approved so our staff can get on. Thank you, Your Worship.
Agreed with Councillor Jackson on that, Your Worship. So do you want me to read the other 2 out?
So I think that's a good idea, and I'd like to understand if there actually is a problem from staff, and if there are committees that are meeting that are creating demands, and see if there actually is a tension that needs to be addressed through this council procedure bylaw.
And this is not unique to Harrison, this staff situation I mean, they have their lives as well, you know, and it can become a lengthy day sometimes if you have your meetings all meetings in the evenings. The other one was, this is all going to staff, that's fine. I believe at delegations that there should not be any subjects discussed relating to agenda items. I think you brought that up early on in a different way, but I think that it should be left out of it. I mean, the whole idea of receiving delegations is in most cases, is from groups with or the RCMP like we did last week, but I don't think it'd be a good thing for delegates to get up there and start dictating how our recommendations should be dealt with. So that's that one. The last one is due to, and I know I've mentioned this to you before, Your Worship, to try and move the meetings along a little bit sooner, is to also delete reports from staff and only reports from yourself if they're needed. That's the three.
Thank you, Councillor Fascio. On the delegations, right now, the way the draft bylaw is written in section 16B, it does require whoever's petitioning to be a delegation to name the topic to be discussed. And I think if there is an inappropriate topic, then that would be up to whether or not it actually makes the agenda. So I think there's a flexibility in there to ensure. I know we've had petitions for delegations from tabletop composters and others which didn't seem to fit into the business of the village in a good way. So those didn't make it. So I think that's there. And your third proposal was that we
Reports from council and mayor.
not to have that in the agenda, or to remove the reports? Sorry.
Reports should be removed from councillors, and if the mayor has something of importance to bring forward, that he can do himself. Or if a councillor has a report, he can put that in writing to the corporate officer, who could be included in the agenda. That's been done before as well.
I don't have strong feelings either way on that, Councillor Fascio. It's an interesting idea. I think if it's a question of meetings running long, then again, self-discipline on how we report and being succinct probably goes part way to keeping our meetings in a manageable time. I find it valuable to have reports from councillors, and I think the informalness of it allows a quick catch-up to know what we've all been doing over the interim from the last council meeting. So I don't think that lengthens our meetings in an unjustifiable way, but it's an interesting idea. Any other councillors' comments on that? So we have a motion to go to third reading with some amendments. I need some guidance from the corporate officer. I'm not sure, as drafted right now with those amendments, where we would get to. And I don't want to lose the opportunity to go to third reading, and I know if it fails, we can't go to third reading, so guidance from you.
Thank you. If this motion fails, you could still give it third reading as presented. So there is that option. In kind of the absence of precise wording for the amendment, I would probably recommend that this just be referred back to staff if council would like to incorporate Councillor Fascio's amendments. Thanks.
So we got the original motion with amendments. I'd like to propose an amendment to the motion to take this to third reading and amend it, take it to third reading and request a report from staff on the timing of committee meetings, third one, delegations, and reports of councillors. Is there a seconder to that motion? It's seconded by Councillor Swine-Benz. Any discussion on the amendment to the original motion? Councillor Vital.
Thank you, Mayor Talland. Just for a little bit of clarification, your amended motion is to accept third reading and then request staff do their investigation and then have it come back to council for final adoption. Is that correct?
That's correct. It would be third reading. The bylaw could come back to council for adoption at a subsequent council meeting. Hopefully we would get the report from our staff, and that might inform whether we make amendments to the draft bylaw that we have in front of us. Corporate officer, is that okay?
Thank you. Just a couple of comments, Mayor Talon, if I could. In order to make changes after third reading, you'd have to repeal third reading anyways. So there shouldn't be changes to the bylaw between third reading and adoption. So just for council's awareness on that. I do believe that the frequency of committee meetings and commission meetings and the timing would be addressed through the committee's terms of reference. So one change to the council procedure bylaw is that the terms of reference will now be going to council for review and approval. And I think at that point, it would allow council to have a look at the document and review it and say, is there any way you can make these changes within your committee? As you mentioned, the RDS committee is an example of one that's under a time crunch and would need to meet more frequently than other ones. So I do feel that could be adequately addressed through that process, which is worked into this bylaw the way it is. So that was one piece, but yeah, if there's going to be any changes, you would have to repeal third reading anyways, so council could also keep it at second reading tonight as well.
Thank you, Corporate Officer. I think I understand that and the implications. I also thank you for your quick assessment that perhaps some of the items that Councillor Fascio raised could be addressed through other means rather than the direct amendments to the Councillor bylaw. So that might help inform how we vote on this too. Councillor Vital.
Thank you, Mayor Talon. Yes, I agree with your comment. I would very much like to see this be passed for third reading. We've kicked around this bylaw for considerable time, even prior to yours and Councillor Schweinbeck's election. So I will be voting for it to go to third reading, and as our corporate officer said, minor adjustments or whatever can be done at a later time. I think we are all, looking at the overview of the bylaw tonight, so I support it going to third reading. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Vital. Any other discussion on the motion? Councillor Schweinbenz.
Thank you, Mayor Talon. A couple of comments and possibly an amendment of my own. First of all, I've got Mr. Garneau's letter here, and I really respect his attention to process. in this, and he raised a couple of concerns that I had too, particularly with regards to 18H, and that is having 5 minutes only. And we discussed this, and I just want to reply to Mr. Garno that I think with a good chair recognizes when more dialogue is required and when it has to go around the table a second time potentially. So I appreciate that you guide us through some of that discussion. So that's covered to my satisfaction. And with regards to section 19, I think that's where the corporate officer keeps us in good stead and guides us through some of the motions and challenges that we may have with points of order. So I appreciate his attention to detail. But I think we've adequately covered most of this. I do have one potential amendment, and I'm not sure if it's appropriate to bring up now. Oh, and I had one more comment, and that is with regards to the 5:30 start. And for the public who may be listening, we did talk about this at length. We debated this at length, and we settled on this, and we all agreed on this. And just so the public knows, when a new council is formulated, we agreed that the time can change back to 7 o'clock or any other different time. The municipalities in BC do it at many different times, and this is what we've agreed to do to help out staff and help out the process. So I'm comfortable with that, but just so that we are satisfied, it can be changed back to 7 o'clock at another time or with a new council after a new election. The potential amendment that I wanted to discuss, and again, I'm not sure if it's appropriate to do it this time because we've already had a vote on it earlier, and that is with regards to question period. And I've thought about this more. We debated whether to have it at the beginning of the evening or the end of the evening. And as I mentioned, we come into these chambers for a 7 o'clock or 5:30 meeting, and we are open-minded, we are malleable, we are open to suggestions and debate around this table. And I liked the idea of having question period at the beginning for that reason, because question period is the only time that the public has the ability to raise topics of the evening and to have a comment or a question about that. And if it's appropriate, I'm wondering if we could amend that back to the beginning of the evening. So that's the amendment that I would propose, if possible.
Got a lot of amendments on the motion. Councillor Schweinbenz, I recall committee of the whole or our special council meeting. I don't know how many times we need to lose that vote, but it was, I think, pretty. I think the other three councillors had a strong preference to keep that at the end of the meeting. I am sort of reluctant to go back over that same conversation for what may be the same result. I'm just worried that right now with all these amendments that we're going to lose the opportunity to have third reading. And what I'm sensing from council, to be blunt, is considerable discomfort with how this bylaw is presently drafted. And I'm just wondering if we should even consider it tonight, because the longer we sit here, the more amendments we're going to have. We're going to keep tinkering and tinkering.
May I ask you call the question then, Mayor Tallon?
The question
to go to
is,
third?
Yeah. So the question is, the motion, corporate officer, could you repeat the motion so we know what we're voting on?
Thank you. So originally there was a motion to, it was the staff recommendation, and then that was changed with amendments as proposed by Councillor Facio. Motion to amend by Mayor Tallon, seconded by Councillor Schweinbenz, third reading as presented, and request a report from staff on timing of committee meetings, delegations, and reports of councillors. So that's where that motion is right now.
Thank you, corporate officer. I'll call the vote on that motion. All in favor? And that carries unanimously. Next item on our agenda, corporate officer.
Moving on to item 13C, which is report of community services manager regarding waste collection and disposal amendment bylaw number 1222, 2025.
Please proceed, community services manager.
Thank you, Mayor Tallon. At the November 18th, 2024 regular council meeting, staff reported that a new contract was awarded to GFL Environmental Inc. to continue as the service provider for curbside waste collection for the next 3 years. At the December 18th, 2024 regular council meeting, the following resolution was passed. That staff be directed to draft updates to waste collection and disposal bylaw number 1172/2022 with respect to provisions for the timeframe of placing waste containers out for collection and storage of waste bins, and that staff be directed to include seasonal wildlife protection messaging in their communications planning. Attached to this report is an amendment bylaw proposing changes that seek to bring the bylaw into compliance with the updated service agreement and the above resolutions. For ease of reference, a draft consolidated version showing the proposed changes incorporated has also been attached. Additions are shown in yellow and deletions are shown struck through in red. Schedule A of the Waste Collection and Disposal bylaw was updated to reflect the current costs for the next 3 years with GFL Environmental Inc. Staff worked with GFL Environmental Inc., and homeowners will now be able to utilize 2 green waste bins if they wish to purchase an additional bin. These limits are reflected in Section 4D. Staff reviewed the Wildlife Attractant Bylaw Toolkit posted on WildSafe BC's website, along with other local municipalities' waste management and waste collection bylaws. The proposed changes will clarify for residents that waste containers for curbside collection are not to be put out until the morning of collection in efforts to deter wildlife from being attracted to bins, which should be stored securely outside of the curbside collection pickup window. Just a note on financial considerations that these waste collection fees per resident are set as a cost recovery service. The fees outlined correspond to the annual collection fees and administrative costs set out by GFL Environmental Inc. There have also been additions to the new fee schedule to allow for cost recovery if residents wish to purchase replacement latches or additional or replacement containers. The first recommendation is that Waste Collection and Disposal Amendment Bylaw number 1222/2025 be introduced and given first reading.
So moved, Your Worship.
Moved by Councillor Fascio, seconded by Councillor Schweinbenz. We have motion for the second reading. Or, sorry? Just first. Oh, sorry, we need to call the vote. Sorry. I'm out of sequence here. All in favor of the motion first reading? That carries unanimously. Councillor Vital calls a motion for second and third reading of this amendment bylaw, seconded by Councillor Jackson. Discussion on that. Councillor Vital.
Thank you, Mayor Tallon. I'll be very quick. Through you to our corporate services manager, I notice additional fees that the tag sticker for additional waste, and I assume that that is bags are $2.50 each. I'm just wondering, and often at the beginning of the year, we are provided, I believe it's 3 or 4 tags free. Will that still be in effect? Thank you.
Community Service Manager.
Thank you, Mayor Tallon. Through you to Councillor Vital, yes, that program will still be in effect as part of our renegotiated contract with GFL. And the tag sticker for additional waste is at the same rate as it has been for the past number of years of $2.50 for additional waste bags.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Vital. I have a question. The amendment to D, Amendment D, not prior to 5 a.m. Can I get an explanation as to the rationale behind that proposed amendment? Community Service Manager.
Thank you, Mayor Tallon. GFL has requested that the containers be placed out by 7 a.m. And so in reviewing in accordance with trying to mitigate some of the wildlife attractant risks, that was a similar time frame to what other communities have in their bylaws as a recommendation, recognizing that there is sort of a window of time when residents could awake in the morning before work to be able to get their day's start. So that is where that 5 a.m. came from, is just sort of the general consensus among balancing a bit of the wildlife attractants as well as the early curbside collection pickup time when GFL estimates that they'll be in town.
Further question and clarification, what is the fine for putting it out prior to 5 a.m.? Because I see in the village on Wednesday nights, usually by 9 or 10, I know exactly what's being picked up the next morning, and I would think our entire village would not be in compliance with this. So is there a fine associated with this? Corporate Officer.
Thank you, Mayor Talon. Yes, so that is section 4D. There currently is not a fine associated to that particular section. Any fines under the bylaw, notice enforcement bylaw with respect to this particular bylaw are $100. And just as a side note, we are working on this bylaw right now to incorporate some changes that came about as a result of the new noise bylaw. So if there are any directives from council in that regard, we'd be happy to take feedback for fines. Thank you.
Thank you, Corporate Officer. I have the pleasure, the privilege of being, I think, the first house, for some reason, where they come by, and they're often there at 7. You can almost set your watch on it. I find the 5 a.m. a difficult one to achieve, to set my alarm to put out garbage cans. I understand bear proofing in animals, but I just don't see the village complying with this in a very even way. Councillor Fascio.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yes, as you probably know, last year there were several instances where bears or whatever, cougars were breaking into those. And as you're right, the organics are put out at night time. A lot of players, they think that lock is gonna stop a bear from getting in there, but it won't. So maybe to save a lot of mail outs extra, we could get, when we do the tax notices, we could get it in the tax notice. We do put some notes on our tax notices, and maybe that could be put on there that there is a fine if you put your bins on the curbside before 5 o'clock, before 7 o'clock.
Thank you, Councillor Fascio. Any other comments on this? Councillor Schweinmans.
Thank you, Mayor Talon. You won't have to set your alarm for 5. You can set it for 5 to 7, and you'll be okay. But I think this is a great opportunity for the community to come together into a Bear Smart program. It's not always bears, it's raccoons and possums, but maybe the bear is our mascot when it comes to garbage safety. And they're going to be up pretty soon, and the raccoons and everybody else will be up shortly from hibernation. So I hope the education program gets out in the next few weeks. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Schweinmans. Whether a bear attacks my compost or garbage can beside the garage or on the street is just a matter of a few yards, and I don't see how it makes a difference, to be blunt. I'd like to propose an amendment to this that not prior to 10 p.m. the day before garbage collection. People are still entitled to get up early and do that, but there are bins out by 8, 9 o'clock on almost every driveway in the village. And I don't see the merit in having a bylaw that we know it's not going to be complied with. A motion to not before 10 p.m. the night before garbage pickup, I move that, seconded by Councillor Vital. A discussion to that motion. Councillor Schweinmans.
Mayor Talon, with respect, this is a big step backwards. The whole idea of a Bear Smart program is to make sure that people are not putting their garbage out at night, the night before. This is the whole idea of a Bear Smart program. And we can check with staff on that, but garbage should be secured in your garage throughout the week. It should not be accessible to wildlife, to birds, to possums, to raccoons, whatever there are out there. And this is what we voted on. That we voted on a Bear Smart program in the village, and we knew it included changes and some enforcement and mostly education when it comes to our solid waste program. So I would not be supportive of this motion at all.
Any other discussion on the motion? I'll call the vote on the motion to amend to as moved. All in favor? 3 in favor, opposed, 2 opposed, and the motion carries. Any other discussion on the motion for second and third reading? Seeing none, I'll call the vote on that. All in favor? And that carries unanimously. Next item, Corporate Officer.
Thank you. We have our planning consultant joining us by Zoom this evening regarding Development Procedures Bylaw number 1214, 2025.
Please proceed.
Thank you, Your Worship. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Already. Excuse me. The Development Procedures Bylaw was noted as one of the many bylaws that required to be updated. And we had a meeting back with the special council meeting back in January 14, where council had a look at it and provided some comments. And in addition to that, we've had the corporate officer and the chief administrative officer review it, and it's all been all the changes that have been suggested along the way have been incorporated into the draft attached bylaw. So what are some of the changes that we've done to the bylaw? Well, starting on page 128 of the agenda package, we came up with new definitions with respect to application and reapplication. We removed the references to the Part 14 applications. What we are doing there is we're distinguishing and clarifying what an application is versus a building conversion strata application. There's 2 different processes that are needed for that. So we just thought we would clarify that in the bylaw. What the Part 14 applications address are the OCP amendments, the zoning amendments, the issuance of any permits, such as your temporary use permits, your development variance permit, and your development permit itself. We've added in the new definitions of what we mean by a qualified professional and the Advisory Planning Commission, which is also on page 128 of the agenda package. We've updated the public notification meeting requirements. We changed required monetary security requirements from 125 to 150% of a cost estimate, and that's on page 134 of your agenda package. We changed the concept of a revised application to a reapplication. We've clarified what sections apply to applications and building conversion strata applications. We've updated the reapplication requirements. We've added in the 12-month time period, and this is in section 17.2 to 17.5, which is on page 135 of your agenda. We've added in the new development sign notice requirements as outlined in section 21 of the attached bylaw, and linked this with the village's sign bylaw in the process. And this is outlined on page 136 and 140 of your agenda package. We've allowed the applicant to make a presentation to council at the front end of the process as opposed to just at the public hearing. And this is section 14.3, where identified on page 133 of your agenda package. We've removed the provisions for providing any refund. The current bylaw, once the first report goes in, there's no refund, but prior to that, they can apply for a 50% refund, and it still takes a lot of time and effort to get a report together. So we're removing the refund, and that's identified in section 11.1 on page 131 of the bylaw. We've linked the new development approval information requirements to the development procedures bylaw through section 20, and that's on page 136 of the agenda package. We've removed the public hearing section, as this will be addressed by the new council procedures bylaw. number 1216, 2025, if adopted. We've removed the public notice of intent section as this was made redundant by the village's public notice bylaw 1200, 2024. We've removed any of the penalties requirements. What we did not change was the process flow chart. They are still attached as schedules A and C or A and B. What we did though is we added in a new schedule C, which is on page 140 of your agenda package, and that just provides a template for the development application signs. This development procedures bylaw is a requirement of the Local Government Act and has been reviewed and updated based upon the concepts of natural justice and fair play. With all of that in mind, Your Worship, the staff recommendation is that development procedures bylaw number 1214, 2025 be given first, and that development procedures are first reading, and that development procedures bylaw number 1214, 2025 be given second and third readings.
Move first reading, Your Worship.
Moved by Councillor Fascio, seconded by Councillor Jackson. All in favor? And that carries unanimously. Second and third reading moved by Councillor Vital, seconded by Councillor Schweinbenz. Discussion. Seeing none, I'll call the vote. All in favor? And that carries unanimously. Thank you, Ken, our consultant on land use planning. Thank you. Next item, Corporate Officer.
Moving on to item E, which is the Advisory Planning Commission bylaw. There's no report associated with this bylaw this evening, as the recommendation is that Advisory Planning Commission bylaw number 1219, 2025 be adopted.
Moved by Councillor Jackson, seconded by Councillor Fascio. Discussion to that motion. Seeing none, I'll call the vote. All in favor, and that carries unanimously. We're on to new business. Councillor Vital, I'll let you have the floor for this.
Thank you, Mayor Tallon. I'll propose a motion that Council directs staff to develop a formal anti-racism, anti-discrimination policy, which will provide the framework for reporting and responding to discrimination and racism within the village of Harrison Hot Springs.
I'll second that, Your Worship.
So that's moved by Councillor Vital, seconded by Councillor Fascio. Discussion on the motion. Councillor Vital.
Thank you, Mayor Tallon. Our community thrives on tourism, and working towards our visitors, staff, and council to make them feel welcome, respected, and safe enhances their experiences and encourages repeat visitors. Negative experiences related to discrimination and racism has the potential to damage our village reputation, especially with online reviews and social media sites. A clear policy can provide guidelines for handling incidents proactively and help to prevent escalation. Our community brings together people from very different socioeconomic, ethnic, and cultural backgrounds. A policy establishing a formal procedure for handling complaints promotes fairness and transparency. Without a clear policy, racism and discrimination can create division between our residents and visitors, leading to the potential of damage to our community's reputation. A single incident can lead to bad publicity, which could result in harm to our business community. A clear policy which aligns with the BC Human Rights Code will provide a more local strategy to deal with any incidents. All of our visitors and residents should receive the same level of service, regardless of race, gender, sexual orientation, or cultural background. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Vital. Any further discussion? I'll call the vote. All in favor, and that carries unanimously as well. We're on agenda item 15, questions from the public pertaining to agenda items. Are there any questions from the public tonight? Please proceed.
Good evening. John Allen, 398 Hot Springs Road. I'd like you to look at page 59 in your agenda package. It's headed Disposal of Surplus Items and Equipment. And if you look down under item 3, Policy Directives, the third paragraph, it says, public auctions shall be conducted by a sealed bidding process. Any items sold through the public auction process shall be accompanied by a bill of sale. In those few words, you have combined two completely different and opposite processes. A public auction is a very open and transparent system in which all bidders are invited to bid. Everybody can see who's bidding, and they all know what's going on, and the eventual knockdown sale price is immediately available to all members of the public, bidders included. A sealed bid process is an entirely different process. It's secretive. And in fact, it works quite well for major government contracts where there's a lot of paperwork and preparation. But in all of those contracts, and as a matter of policy, particularly for the disposal of public goods and for the expenditure of public money, the sealed bid process requires that those bids be opened in public. In some cases, they're opened immediately on the bid day, and everybody can see who bid what and who was the low bid or the high bid, as the case may be. Your policy here confuses two absolutely contrary processes, an auction on one hand and a sealed bid on the other. So if you're going to go to a sealed bid, you should get rid of all the auction language in here, but you should go a little further and say that all sealed bids must be opened in public, because that's the only way that the public has any assurance that the bids are opened and dealt with as they were submitted. So I'd suggest that your policy, which isn't a bylaw, it's just a policy, so it's easy for you to correct, that your policy either go back to having a public auction, which is what I advocate, or if it's going to be a sealed bid, it adds the requirement that the sealed bids be open in public. And I, as a bidder, will go to that public opening on all sealed bids to see what the other bids are and whether I won the job or the lot or didn't. And I think that's the proper way to do it. You speak, Mr. Mayor, of transparency and openness. If you want to do that, you need to change this particular policy. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments and suggestions. I don't see any contradiction. I certainly don't think the mayor should be conducting a public auction. I'm not an auctioneer. I've reviewed the BC branch of the Alberta Auctioneering Association and the National Association of Auctioneers. I just don't think it's a good idea. I think the policy is sufficiently clear. There's sealed bids, and the winning bid is the winning bid. Next question, please.
Good evening, Teresa Omelas, 641 Schooner Place. So my questions are in regards to page 61 from the Community Services Manager's report. I'm wondering if any consideration has been given to having a standardized location for the public toilets for the rentals during these events. I know during my campaign, I had a number of residents complain about the odors when the toilets were located on Miami River Drive. So that was one question. My next question is also in the same category, and that would be, has any consideration been given to having a standardized parking plan for events such as Dragon Boat Festival and Harrison Festival of the Arts, specifically for large vehicles such as RVs, campers, etc. I've noticed during various events that these vehicles are parked haphazardly and they're on the overflow parking lot, and having a standardized plan would allow more vehicles to park in a more efficient manner. My third question is also in the same category, and it's in regards to traffic control. So I would like to suggest and ask if a traffic flagger has been considered as part of the package rental for these events. That would facilitate local residents having safer access to Hot Springs Road and being able to get out of their driveways on Miami River Drive and Walnut. I know those were concerns that people were very frustrated about. And lastly, you could also consider having a damage deposit for litter pickup for these rentals, and the damage deposit could be returned, and that would also mitigate the necessity of having your staff involvement to pick up litter after these events. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments and suggestions. I saw lots of note-taking from our community services manager, and they're reviewing those things, and thank you for those comments, and I'm sure they'll be considering them. If there are any comments, questions from anyone participating remotely on Zoom tonight?
If anybody on Zoom has a question, please push the raise your hand button.
Is there a question from someone participating remotely on Zoom? Please proceed with your question.
Oh, wow, I can't even hear you now. So one feedback, the Zoom is awful this evening, if you can hear me.
We can
The
hear you.
video is cutting in and out, and the audio, I had to hook up to a Bluetooth and put really loudly, so that's that. Thank you for taking questions past 9 p.m. And now it's ridiculous because I can't hear a word you're saying. But Mayor Talon, as you said, it's been 4 months and since our by-election, and I realized that, you know, we got a new mayor and we got a new councillor, and giving full benefit of the doubt that you came into a difficult situation. I'm just curious when the number of in-camera meetings will be less than the number of public meetings. Can't hear or see them.
Yeah, thank you for your question, Lisa. I'm finding it very hard to hear you as well through this connection. If I understood right, your question was about the number of closed meetings, in-camera meetings versus the number of open meetings. And your question, if I understood you, was, will there be less in-camera meetings than open meetings?
Yes, I mean, I understand why we have, you know, in-camera meetings. But my question is, are we getting past the point where we need to have so many in-camera meetings and we can have more public meetings?
Certainly, it was a good question. It's not on the agenda, but I know we were dealing with council procedures, and it's probably timely. Council has a requirement to have closed meetings for certain subjects when they arise, and we have the option to go into closed meetings or in-camera meetings on other matters. We rely on our staff and our corporate officer in particular, who are well-versed and are very clear on the rules for going into in-camera meetings. As to the number of in-camera meetings, it depends on the matters that come before council and what those are and the nature of those, and whether it requires an in-camera discussion amongst council. I don't know the exact number of in-camera meetings we've had in the last 4 months, but I think it's far less than the number of open meetings we've had. But I don't have those numbers at my fingertips. But our committee meetings are generally open. Committee of the whole meetings are open, and we've had a lot of those. So we have just the number of meetings we have. Sometimes they're very short, sometimes they're longer. But it depends on the nature of that, and it comes down to having discussions in camera when that is in the best interest of the village. We have a requirement to report out from in-camera meetings as soon as possible or practicable, And tonight there was reporting out of a closed meeting with appointments to boards. So we have that, and that's all in the charter as well. But I can assure you we're having only the closed meetings when we absolutely have to. Our council's preference and the legislation requires open meetings, and our staff are sticklers for that, and they guide us on that. Does that answer your question?
Yes. Yeah, I mean, I understand. I've sat on plenty of boards and I've done plenty of time. I understand the difference between in camera and public and why the need for one and the other. I will just suggest that over the last while, and not just in 4 months, by the way, but compared to most other municipalities, I feel we have more in camera than others.
Okay, fair enough. I know there are certain members of the public that take a lot of relish in secret meetings and documenting that. There are no secret meetings. If council goes in camera, we tell everyone we're going in camera and the reason why. They're not a secret.
Not suggesting a secret. What I'm suggesting is I hope our village is healing and moving forward where there are not so many closed meetings required.
I would like that as well. Unfortunately, there are certain matters that arise that require, and I can't make any commitments to say we won't have in-camera meetings because it's required by legislation or it's in the best interest of the village. I think we're having a lot of open meetings, and I think certain commenters on social media are, for motives of their own, seeking to create divisions and controversy when there is none. We've had very full and complete council meetings, debates, and discussion on a lot of things, but there's a lot of negativity on social media and a lot of misinformation and misstatements.
I'm not worried about social media, but I appreciate your honest answer.
Thank you for your question. Oh, there's one more question. Thank you, Lisa, for your question. I'm going to go to another person participating remotely. Mr. Webster?
Yes. I just want to say tonight was brutal watching this. Motions to failed motions to roundabouts. It was like a dance party tonight. You make it so hard to watch and listen to, and it's so confusing. I think councillors need to do their homework before they come to council meetings so that these questions aren't asked and drag these meetings on and on and on. That's my only comment. It's not really a question other than maybe councillors could do their homework. I think Councillor Fascio mentioned that once before, that councillors should do their homework, and then these questions are not asked and motions that go nowhere. It just takes up time. That's all I got to say. Thank you very much, everybody. Have a good evening.
Thank you, Mr. Webster. Public meetings often include discussion debates. Sometimes it goes forward, sometimes it goes backwards. That's the nature of an open discussion in a public forum. There are rules and procedure which we try and follow. And for myself, I see nothing but council being well prepared for every council meeting.
Really?
I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Seconded by Councillor Fascio. Discussion, all in favor, and that carries. We're adjourned. Thank you, everyone.